Okay, so we're going to do solving one-step equations, which is a review, so we're not going to cover every problem. We are going to talk about a couple of things. So whenever we're solving a one-step equation, you need to do the inverse operation. So that's a fancy way of saying opposite, right? So if it's add, you subtract, multiply, divide. I do want you to practice showing your work like I'm going to display for you. The reason is because we're going to build on this and be doing two-step, three, or multi-step equations, and we need to show our work like this because you're really going to be expected to do this all throughout high school, and your teachers are pretty much going to model solving equations exactly like I'm going to be doing it, and they're going to expect you to show your work like this. Okay, so there are some things that I am okay with you showing your work a different way and not doing exactly what I'm doing, but there are a few things in algebra that I ask that you follow like exactly what I'm doing, and this solving equations is one of those things that I would like you to follow what I'm doing and not try to do your own thing, okay? So I want you to practice showing your work like I am showing you, and I want you to also be doing that on your homework. Okay, so when you're solving your equations, you're going to isolate the variable, and that means you're going to get everything on one side of the equation and everything else on the other. So we already talked about inverse operations. Also equivalent equations, that is basically they're equivalent on both sides of the equal sign. So whenever we perform an inverse operation, we have to do it to both sides to keep it equivalent. Okay, so first example, number 1. So this is pretty basic review right here. So x plus 7 equals 4. You got to think, what's your inverse operation here? So it's addition. So I'm going to subtract. So here's how I show this. Minus 7 on both sides, and that's exactly how I want you to show that. So on the left side, my 7s are canceling, which is why I did that. So I'm going to drop down my x equals, and on the right-hand side, I have 4 minus 7. So I have negative 3. And we're just going to go through one of each operation, and then we'll do some work with fractions, and then we'll be done. Okay, so number 2. X minus 12 equals 3. So my inverse operation is what? Addition. So I'm moving away from the variable. So I'm going to add 12 to both sides. So the 12s cancel. I get x equals 15. Number 3. Okay, so what operation is actually happening between the negative 6 and the x? Multiply. So the inverse would be to divide. So here's how I show that. I just put a line, like a fraction, and I would put a negative 6 under it instead of a divide sign with like the 2 dots in the bar. So I just put a line and a negative 6. So I would be left with x equals what? Negative 8, right? Okay, number 4. X over 3 equals 12. So what's my operation there? Division. So the opposite would be to multiply. So I'm going to show that like this with parentheses. So my 3's are going to cancel, and I'm going to have x equals 36. Okay, we're going to move on to some fractions. Okay, so negative 2/7 x equals 4. So between the fraction and the x, that's telling us to multiply. So the inverse would be to divide. How do you actually divide fractions? So we multiply by the reciprocal or change, flip. Some of you have learned. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to flip it and multiply. So I'm going to change it to negative 7/2, and I'm going to multiply on both sides. And that'll get rid of my fraction. So I'm going to have x equals, and then 4 times negative 7/2. Which is what? Negative 14? Okay, number 6. So 5, 6w equals 10. I have to go through that same process. So I'm going to flip it and multiply. So I'm going to take both sides times 6/5. So w equals 60 divided by 5. It's hard to hear.
I was like, wait.
I'm sorry.
First,
it's my ears are clogged first, and second, with everybody with the face covered, it's very difficult. Okay. All right, number 7. All right, again, same process, flip and multiply. So you're going to multiply by 3/2. So z equals I got 21. Okay, and then we just have one more. This looks different because the variable's on the right. Sometimes students don't really like that. It really doesn't matter what side it's on. No, you do not need to rewrite it and switch it. It does not make a difference. You're going to have to kind of get used to working with the variable on either side. But so now I'm looking at negative 3/4 times m. So again, you're going to multiply by the reciprocal. So take that times negative 4/3. So m equals negative 12. Okay, and then your assignment is going to be worksheet 3.1.